want to talk about the third dimension really quickly. And one reason why living in the third dimension actually supports through the world of quantum physics. Now, we think that we see things in 3D. So we think that we're living in a 3D world. And we can go to the movies and we can put glasses on, and we can have things fly out at us, and we are seeing a movie in 3D. Well, the thing is we're living inside the third dimension. So we are inside the third dimension, which means we can't actually see the third dimension. We're actually seeing the second dimension. And everything that we see is the second dimension. And how do we know this? Well, all I want you to do is put your hand right in front of you. Go ahead and put your hand right in front of you and tell me tell me if you can see the palm of your hand, or if you're looking at the palm of your hand, what's on the back of your hand. So you can't actually see that. You can only see a plane of shape. And through different shadowings or colorings, we can tell, okay, well, that shape is maybe further away, or that shape is not attached to this other shape. But we're seeing everything in shapes. So that's saying that if somebody's living in the first dimension, they're actually not seeing anything at all. So that if you're living on the second dimension, you would see everything on the first dimension, which would mean that you're just seeing a line. No matter what it is, an apple, a book, you'd just only be seeing a line because you can't see anything else. So the third dimension sees everything in the second dimension. And because we're living inside the third dimension, we have a very narrow and isolated point of view. That means that when we look at our little particle that's in the center of our sun, and we have all these different trajectories coming off of us, all these bursts of light coming off of us, we literally will see one of that little particle that has 1 trillion eyeballs to look down a trajectory. And then we have another little eyeball, one of those trajectory branches. It is isolated from the rest. That's the same as everything here. So I'm isolated now in this room that I'm in currently. I can't see what's on the other side of the door. I can't see physically here. I can't see what's happening down the street. I can't see what's happening in Africa. I can't see anything else but what is literally in this room, what is literally in my purview. And so that creates isolation, and that creates this feeling that we're living on a linear path where we're born, we die, and we have these ups and downs. We have these particular lessons we're supposed to learn. So that's just one isolated thing. Now, when we die, when this physical body dies, and our consciousness continues, when this physical body dies, then all of a sudden we get to actually see the third dimension, which means that we actually get to see all of these life experiences that this particular life experience lived or witnessed. So that's really an interesting thing to look at, is perceptually, how is it living in the third dimension, and what does that mean then consciously? So consciously, once this physical body is done, and we look at this physical body as an observation tool, and we have, this observation tool is doing all these trillions of different things. The exact same Maren is living and witnessing or observing 1 trillion different life trajectories. When this body is done, when this observation tool is all done, I get to have this beautiful life experience. And that music note goes up and it feeds our overarching symphony, which is our consciousness, our overarching consciousness. And some people will say, oh, it's like a little orb. And we're going to have that music note be an integral, important part of our overarching consciousness, which is like a symphony. And that music note is whole, total, and complete. It's not going to feed over to another music note. It will blend. It will be nice. It will make pretty music. But there we go. Thinking of this body. This body is an electromagnetic organism. Because it's an electromagnetic organism, we have a field of energy that exudes or radiates off of our body, and it also picks up on other energy around us. Now, there's a ton of energy around us. I mean, there's so much energy around us, and there's so much energy on this other side of this veil that, how in the world are we going to be able to figure out what is important or relevant to our life experience here and what we really don't actually need. And so that's where the veil comes in. And a lot of people, when they're thinking of the veil, they think maybe the veil's on the other side of the wall. I got to get through this veil. I can't see the veil, but it's right here somewhere. And if I could just breach that veil, I can see everything, and I can have this great connection with my consciousness or my higher self or whatever you want to call it. Well, the only place the veil is for you is your brain. That is the only location of this veil. And when we're in utero, there really is no veil. Our brain is still in development. We have a whole bunch of pathways. We have a whole bunch of reception points in our brain, and those are open. And so our consciousness is just observing the development of the body. We have to figure out, what the environment we're going to be born into is, and there's a lot of information that's coming in that way. But when we're born, what happens is these frequencies, our brain mutes all of it. So it disconnects or mutes all of these other frequencies around us. And what it's going to do is it's very slowly, in its own time, start navigating this life here. Meaning it's going to start saying, okay, is this relevant information? Well, what's the first thing that we need to do? We need to actually learn how to communicate. And the way that we're going to learn how to communicate is crying. And so once we figure out a certain cry, a certain pitch, and we can regulate that pitch to say, I'm hungry, or to say, I'm uncomfortable, or to say, I'm lonely and I want you to pick me up. Once we start having comprehension of this communication tool, which is crying, what's going to happen is these frequencies are going to open a little more in our brain. And a little bit more information is going to come in because we have comprehension of the former information. We know what it's for, we can use it in our life, and we are now ready because we need more information. We can't just go around crying all the time. And our mother or father keeps talking to us and we have absolutely no idea what they're going to say. So language starts coming in. These little openings in our brain kind of get a little bit bigger and it starts letting words in. And when we can comprehend cat, then all of a sudden it's going to say, oh, well, you knew cat. Now how about apple? And then we start learning apple. And we'll learn it in the language of the country that we're born in or in the language that is in our home. And words are strictly for earthbound communication only. You do not need words for ethereal communication at all. 0 words. You don't need them. This is strictly earthbound. So let's say you're in school and you're sitting in class and you're in first grade and you're learning 2 + 2 = 4. Great, good job. And as soon as you can comprehend that 2 + 2 = 4, then these frequencies open up and they allow more information in. So you're actually not learning in school that 2 + 2 = 4. What you're doing is learning comprehension. So you're comprehending information from the world around you, and your teacher's trying to get you to comprehend that a little bit faster or to put labels on it. We don't all need to know calculus, and we don't all need to know all of Shakespeare's plays because they're not relevant to our life experience. And so your brain, it will just be like, I don't want to know it. I don't need to know it. I'm not going to open those pathways. No. And you don't need it. That's where the veil actually comes from. And there's ways to open up, some of these pathways in your brain to allow more information to free flow in. I used to travel way out, way out. And I've done this since I was basically born. I would go out as far as I could possibly go out away from this body to explore what I would see on the other side of the veil. And quickly, why I would do that is because for some reason, we'll talk about frequencies and we'll talk about the muting of different frequencies when we look at the veil. But part of these frequencies didn't close all the way for me. And so I see life almost holographic. and then I actually have to take that information and say, okay, I want to see what it looks like on the earthbound existence. So when I was 3, I would just go and venture out. And on one of these particular nights, and the other thing is I have an extraordinarily low blood pressure. So my blood pressure is so low that sometimes I'll go into the hospital, like when I was pregnant, and they'd be like, how are you even alive? It's that low. So when I relax, or if I travel out, I actually have put myself into cardiac arrest, not by choice. It just happened. My body just said, okay, we're done. We don't need to be here anymore. So when I was 3, I started traveling out, and I went out farther and farther and farther, and I could feel my breath get heavy. And what I mean by that is I could feel gravity pulling my rib cage and my lungs down towards the back of my body into my bed. And I could feel, as that gravity was pulling down, I could feel my heart becoming very, very quiet. Very quiet. But I was a child, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm just far enough away that I can't really hear it that well, or I can't really feel it that well. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, something is amiss. And I turn around, and I say I turn around. It's not like I was going in one direction, but for visual sake, I turned around and said, oh, I need to go home. So I start trying to head back home, and it was very hard. And it was to the point where I actually couldn't get there. It was almost like there was a barrier blocking me. So I'm swimming, I'm pulling myself back. And what was happening at that time was my father was actually reviving me. And how he knew to check on me, he had just gotten back from Vietnam, and I would knock on the wall. I'd go 1, 2, 3, and my dad's office was on the other side of the wall, and he would go 1, 2, 3. And on this particular night, I wasn't knocking. And so he double checked me on his way out of the office, and unfortunately found me. And I only bring up that he was back from Vietnam because, I mean, he was already around tons of death and dying, and to have him walk in on a child that's not breathing and needs to be revived must have been very scary for him. For me, it was just a confirmation of things that I was already seeing. So it wasn't a scary experience. It wasn't anything. It was just kind of like, oh, I got to go back to camp, and camp being this earthbound life. So that's happened to me a couple other times. Well, twice more as an adult, that were where I would actually need to be revived. And it usually happens while I'm asleep, because my whole body will just kind of shut down. But one time it did happen, or it started happening, so this would be kind of a quasi 4th time, when I was in Home Depot. And I was standing there, and all of a sudden the whole world went away. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get home? I'm like, home? What is home? What does that mean? Where is home? I don't know what happened. I think it had to do with some of the fluorescent lights, when they kind of buzz. That kind of sends me into almost a stroke sometimes. And I think that's what happened. And my body just went, and it short-circuited, and I was out. So those are my near-death experiences, and each one was a confirmation of what I was seeing and what I see in my everyday life. So it was more validating than it was awakening for me. And it was also very interesting for me to see the translation and how my brain actually translated some of the information that I was getting into this life experience here, which we'll touch on that in a little bit.